What if I told you that the very roads you drive on, the calendar you use to mark your birthday, even the book you might be holding in your hands, all of these trace their origins back to ancient Rome? Imagine a world without concrete buildings, without running water in cities, without highways connecting nations. Hard to picture, right? Yet 2,000 years ago, the Romans were already solving problems we still wrestle with today. Some of their inventions were so brilliant that we still rely on them, sometimes without even realizing it. Today, we're diving into 10 Roman innovations that didn't just shape an empire. They changed the world forever. The Roman Empire is often remembered for its battles, emperors, and conquests. We imagine the legions marching under the eagle's standard, or gladiators clashing in the Colosseum. But Rome's true legacy lies not just in war or politics, but in the innovations that emerged from its society. The Romans were master builders, thinkers, and problem solvers. They didn't always invent ideas from scratch. Many came from the Greeks, the Etruscans, or even civilizations further east. But Rome had a unique genius for adapting, refining, and expanding those ideas on a scale the world had never seen before. So the question we're exploring today is this: how did Roman inventions not only build an empire, but lay the foundation for the world we live in today? From the stone beneath your feet to the very way we count the days of our lives, the Romans left fingerprints everywhere. And by the end of this journey, I think you'll see Rome not just as a powerful empire of the past, but as a surprisingly familiar force that still whispers in our modern world. If you want to understand why Rome's architecture still towers above ruins of other ancient civilizations, you must look not at the marble or the stone, but at what held it all together: concrete. The Romans did not invent the idea of binding materials, but they perfected it in a way that no one else in the ancient world could. Their opus caementitium, Roman concrete, was a marvel of both chemistry and ingenuity. Unlike modern concrete, which eventually cracks and crumbles, Roman concrete actually grew stronger over time. Its secret lay in the volcanic ash mixed into the lime and water, which created a chemical reaction that allowed the material to heal itself when in contact with moisture. This was no accident. Roman builders, constantly pushing the limits of scale and ambition, needed a material that could endure the strain of aqueducts spanning valleys, harbors battered by relentless waves, and amphitheaters that could hold tens of thousands of spectators. The Colosseum, the pantheon with its vast, unreinforced dome, and the ports of Ostia and Cosa all owed their longevity to this wonder material. More than engineering, concrete changed how Romans thought about space. They were no longer restricted to stacking stones. They could mold and pour, creating curves, arches, and domes that redefined architecture. When you walk through Rome today and see structures still standing after 2,000 years, you are not just looking at ruins. You are looking at a technological leap that made global empires possible. Modern scientists still study Roman concrete in hopes of unlocking its formula, searching for sustainability lessons from an empire 2 millennia gone. It is not an exaggeration to say that without this invention, Rome might never have achieved the monumental scale we now associate with it. Imagine an empire so vast it stretched from the misty hills of Britain to the deserts of Syria, from the Rhine frontier to the sands of North Africa. Holding it together required more than armies and governors. It required roads. Roman roads were not simply dirt tracks worn down by travelers, but carefully engineered marvels of construction. Layer upon layer of stone, gravel, and sand created a surface that was durable, straight, and enduring. Some roads were built so well that they remain in use today, beneath modern asphalt. The saying, "all roads lead to Rome," was more than a proverb. It was a statement of fact. The capital was literally the hub of a network stretching over 250,000 miles, of which 50,000 were paved. This infrastructure allowed Roman legions to march swiftly across provinces, ensuring rebellions were crushed before they could spread. It allowed merchants to trade goods from the far corners of the empire. Olive oil from Spain, spices from the east, glassware from Syria, all converging on bustling markets. Roads also carried ideas, languages, and cultures. Christianity, which would one day reshape the empire itself, spread along these very highways, carried by missionaries and travelers, who found the Roman road system an unexpected ally. The genius of Roman roads was not just their durability, but their design. They prioritized straightness, cutting through hills, bridging rivers, and tunneling mountains to maintain direct roads. This was a statement of Roman willpower. The empire bent nature to its demands. Every stone slab and milestone was a declaration: Rome is here and Rome endures. In truth, these roads were the veins through which the lifeblood of empire flowed: soldiers, trade, culture, and power. Without them, the Roman world could never have held together for centuries. Civilization thrives where there is water, and the Romans knew this better than anyone. Their cities, bustling with hundreds of thousands of inhabitants, could not survive on wells or rivers alone. The aqueduct was their answer, a technological triumph that brought fresh, clean water from distant springs and mountains into the heart of their urban centers. These were not crude channels, but precise engineering works, calculated to maintain a perfect gradient over miles of terrain. The Aqua Appia, built in 312 BCE, was the first, and it set the stage for centuries of innovation. By the height of the empire, Rome boasted 11 aqueducts, stretching for hundreds of miles and delivering millions of gallons of water every day. The scale was breathtaking. Water poured into public baths, fountains, latrines, private villas, and even into industrial workshops that needed it for manufacturing. To a Roman citizen, this was not just luxury. It was the very symbol of civilization. Aqueducts were also an expression of imperial power. Building one required immense resources and political will, and their arches, often striding across valleys in graceful tiers, became monuments in their own right. Cities across the empire, from Gaul to North Africa, boasted their own aqueducts, each a reminder of Rome's gift of water and order. Some aqueducts, astonishingly, still function today, their ancient masonry channeling water centuries after the empire's fall. More than convenience, aqueducts transformed public health. Urban centers that would otherwise choke on their own filth thrived with fresh water and sewage disposal. The very idea of city life on such a grand scale was possible only because Rome solved the water problem. Without aqueducts, the glory of Rome would have been confined to villages and small towns. With them, they built megacities that dwarfed anything the ancient world had seen. To master water was to master civilization, and in this, Rome stood supreme. Time is invisible, yet it rules our lives. Before Julius Caesar, the Roman calendar was a chaotic mess, manipulated by priests for political gain, drifting out of alignment with the seasons, and confusing both farmers and officials. In 45 BCE, Caesar took a bold step. He reformed time itself. With the help of Alexandrian astronomers, he introduced the Julian calendar, a system so effective that it shaped the way we measure days and years for over 500 years, and still echoes in the modern calendar we use today. The genius of the Julian system was its simplicity. It established a year of 365 days, divided into 12 months, with a leap day added every 4 years to correct for the solar year's length. This small adjustment brought order and predictability, aligning civic life, agriculture, and religious festivals with the cycles of the sun. The calendar was more than a practical reform. It was a statement of power. By fixing time, Caesar showed that Rome did not merely conquer lands, but even nature itself. Time now ticked to the rhythm of empire. Every province, every citizen, and every soldier marched in step with Caesar's calendar. The names of the months themselves became a living legacy. July for Julius, August later for Augustus. Through this reform, Caesar left his mark not only on Rome, but on humanity's very perception of time. When the Gregorian calendar was introduced in the 16th century to fine-tune the system, it was only a correction, not a replacement. The backbone of our timekeeping is still Julian. Think of the weight of that achievement. Every date we record, every birthday we celebrate, every new year we mark owes a debt to a decision made in Rome over 2,000 years ago. In ordering time, the Romans gave civilization a framework upon which history itself could be written. The written word is civilization's memory, and how it is stored can determine how it is remembered. Before the Romans, most cultures relied on scrolls, long, fragile rolls of papyrus that were cumbersome to use and easy to damage. But in Rome, a quiet revolution took place: the Codex. Instead of endless rolls, texts were bound into pages, stacked, and enclosed between covers. What seems obvious to us today was radical then. The Codex was portable, durable, and, most importantly, user-friendly. For the first time, a reader could flip back and forth easily, consult passages without unrolling yards of material, and carry knowledge in compact form. Early Christians embraced this format, spreading their sacred texts in codices rather than scrolls, which made their writings more accessible and easier to copy. Soon, scholars, poets, and officials followed, and the Codex became the dominant way to store knowledge. This innovation transformed not just reading, but the survival of knowledge itself. Scrolls deteriorated quickly, but codices could endure. Libraries filled with codices became treasure troves of preserved wisdom. Through them, Rome ensured that its laws, histories, philosophies, and even literature like Virgil's Aeneid could outlast the empire itself. The Codex was not merely a change in format. It was a new way of thinking about information. Knowledge was no longer something you had to unwind and laboriously search through. It became something you could navigate with ease, reference, and share. When the Middle Ages dawned, it was the Codex, born in Rome, that carried the accumulated wisdom of Antiquity into monasteries, universities, and eventually, the Renaissance. Without the Roman Codex, much of what we know today about the ancient world might have vanished forever. It is no exaggeration to say that this quiet invention changed the very fate of human memory. So there you have it, 10 Roman inventions that changed the world. From concrete that outlasts empires, to roads that stitched continents together, to calendars that still order our lives, Rome's innovations weren't just about empire. They were about humanity's leap forward. When we marvel at Rome, it isn't just for its grandeur or power, but for the way it reshaped what it means to live in a civilized world. Every time you open a book, drive on a road, or sip clean water from a tap, you're living in the shadow of Rome. The empire may have fallen, but its inventions never did. If you enjoyed this journey through the inventions of Rome, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Empire Remembered, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And I'd love to hear from you. What Roman invention do you think had the greatest impact on our world today? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, remember, empires may fade, but history never truly disappears.